Hey, what's poppin' nation? It's Lena with What's Poppin' USA, Small Business Home Shopping Network. And today on Glass Table Talks, please help me welcome Miss Shahara Wright of the Wright Law Firm. Shahara is located out of the greater Metro Houston area. And y'all, she's a business lawyer. Oh my goodness. Can't wait to chat it up with this lady. She's been in business for over 20 years, y'all. Please give it up and help me welcome Miss Shahara to the show. So Shahara, go ahead and please let us know all about your business. I'm very excited for this. You are our first, like, for real lawyer professional on here, and I am just thrilled. That means I've come to a new level, girl, because I got the big time. I got big cheeses up here on me. Y'all, I am so proud to introduce Miss Shahara Wright of the Wright Law Firm. She is located in the greater Houston area, and she is a business lawyer. And you know, that is right up our alleys for us small business. Shahara, please go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got started. Did you always want to be a lawyer? And what made you turn business lawyer? Because that's not typical.
So thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I really appreciate it. I always enjoy coming on and conversing with other small business owners and talking about business because I am truly a business nerd. I love talking about it. So it's all good. I've been practicing for 23 years. I'm licensed in the great state of Texas, although I have clients all over. And I work as general counsel for small businesses and nonprofit organizations. And really just what that means is I'm the legal department for these businesses. And so I handle kind of all the legal things that come up. We also deal with trademarks, contract drafting, contract review, day-to-day legal advice for clients, being proactive in what's going on with the business, making sure that we're taking care of HR issues and independent contractor issues. So all the things that can come up with a small business, and believe it or not, it's a lot. That's really what we do.
And I just have to say 23 years, yes. Holy shit, because you don't look it, girl.
Thank you. I'm trying. My youngest son is wearing my nerves down, so I'm not keeping up like I used to, but for sure, I'm trying to keep that stress down.
Kids, beautiful girl. You don't even look like you've been practicing 23 years. I'm sorry. I just had to get that in with my mouth hanging open. Sorry.
Thank you. So yeah, and then to your question about like why law, well, you know, I have a story like most lawyers do that, you know, my mom was like, oh, you're good at arguing, and so you should right? Like that's what almost every lawyer hears. And that kind of stuck with me. Of course, you know, I was like 8 years old when my mom was talking to me about this. I decided I wanted to be a lawyer then. Of course, I did a bunch of different things, like wanted to be a ballerina, a doctor, and, you know, other kind of stuff. But my skill set really was not for those things. So, you know, I just kind of began that track of learning about law and, you know, interning for, you know, a lawyer. My mom had a friend that was a lawyer. I worked in his office, did some young lawyer stuff. When I went to college, you know, I majored in I majored in sociology, not pre-law. Right. And just so I could get the writing and whatever else. And then I went to law school. So I kind of knew that that was a path I was going the whole entire time. So that was really that. And then when I got to law school, I thought I was going to be a prosecutor. Initially, I wanted to do like criminal law. And in my second year, I took a course called Business Entities, and I fell in love with it all. That's when I realized I was a business nerd, because I really loved every single thing about that class. And I was really happy to have the opportunity to learn. So I started working and doing some more transactional work for this nonprofit for a time. And then when I came out of law school, couldn't find a job. I thought I was going to go into corporate law and work for a big corporation. That just didn't happen. So I ended up starting my own practice in January 2000 because I couldn't, find place, but I had my law degree, passed the bar, I was like, I could work. So I just decided to do what I wanted to do, and here I am, 23 years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So as a child, can you remember any argument that you won, like with your parents? Does anything stick out in your head that you used to argue your way?
I always tells the story. If you meet my mom, the first story you ever hear about me is that she's been telling me what to do since she was 3. That's really what my mom, it's like literally I always hear. So, and how I argue about her about whatever and been bossy and whatever. So I don't really remember like anything specific, but
That's cute though.
according to my mom, this has been my personality since I was 3. So,
Oh,
I have
boss baby.
it on. Yes.
That's so cute. That's adorable. That's adorable. So through your trek, I'm sure that you've seen the gamut of businesses. You've seen the very, very tiny ones that are just starting, that
Mhm.
don't know, you know, how to form their business, if they should be a sole proprietor, an LLC, an S corp, a C corp, or you've seen, larger businesses now that already have employees, that already have, themselves at a higher level. Do you see like a commonality, even from the teenies to the largest? Do you see a commonality thread with small businesses as far as lawyering goes, as far as what you have to offer? Are all business owners kind of like the same, um, across the board? Like no knowledge, no clue of whatever they're going, and you got to handhold them, or are most of them already savvy? Do they have a clue of what they need? Or
People are different. I think, in any journey that you're in, right, you come in with some level of knowledge, right, about some things. And as you kind of encounter, you experience new problems, new issues, things that you haven't, done before. I think as, that just happens as you continue on, quote unquote, in age, right? You live long enough, you experience more things. The same thing within business, right? Like the longer you're in business, the more things that you experience,
mm,
it can learn from, myself included, right?
right,
So while I may know some basic things, even in my journey, of this long period of time of being in business, every time I always, I get to another level, I face something new, a new issue, a new problem, new something, that we have to learn, get used to, kind of go to different experts, those kinds of things. So I think we're always evolving, as business owners for sure.
I thank you for saying that, because so many smaller businesses often think that the bigger ones have it all like wrapped up in a bow and they just know
Yeah.
exactly what they're doing. And a lot of times they don't, because they've never encountered this level before, or
Right.
this level before. It's a new level. Maybe that company has never hired employees before. It's the first time.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
they never had to pay out employee insurance or something like that before. It's a new experience, right?
That's definitely true. I mean, everything is always kind of new. I think, really what I would say to people that are, most of the time, 99% of the time, at least that I've come across, when people start a business, they kind of just start, right?
Right,
Something happens, they lost a job, they just decided. They
right.
had some side hustle, they realized they, making pillows, and they were like, oh, everybody loves my pillows.
Came
So
out of college, couldn't find a job.
yes,
Right,
doing something, right? Like they just start. And so most of the time, right, that's just what it happens. I mean, forget
Right.
all of that. You need a business plan and you got to have this 20-page business
Right.
plan, that kind of stuff. 90% of the businesses, 99% of the businesses I encounter don't have any of that when they start. And so they begin to grow. And then when they begin to grow, they experience things that they hadn't experienced before. And on the legal side of that, it could come in different things. They had somebody that didn't pay when they were supposed to pay. They, you know, sorry, for real reason, my phone is talking to me for
You're good.
reasons. So that was random. And so,
Damn Alexa.
yeah, somebody didn't pay when they were supposed to pay. Maybe they entered into a partnership and it went bad, or they gave some money, did some loan to somebody and it didn't work out, or they did some vendor stuff and didn't get their things out. Something small will happen, and were like, okay, I need
Okay.
some legal counsel, or they'll let it go, and
Okay.
these problems kind of continue. So with tiny businesses and micro businesses, those that kind of earn under 250,
Right.
obviously hiring a lawyer can be really expensive and can be really taxing on the budget. What I say is that you should at least have some money set aside to have a consult with an attorney at least once a year. That way you can at least kind of understand what's going on with your business, what's happening, what things you should be paying attention to, what issues. You kind of get some heads up, even if you don't have them, with you all the time, that you at least have some kind of consultation.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, like, you can put aside 250 to 350, to talk to a lawyer once a year.
Right.
I think that that's something that should definitely be considered.
So, okay, so folks that are just starting out with the business, there's certain entities that they can designate as. The one I think most people just go for is the sole proprietor, because you don't have to do anything. All that taxes, all that money is just rolled up underneath your social security number for tax purposes. It doesn't
Right.
really cause a big bug in anything. But for those who are looking to either, or I'll say LLC, right? What happens when your company grows and you outgrow that designation? Like, should you be thinking that far ahead of time, like that far ahead of schedule, and designate automatically as a corporation, or do you do it as it grows?
So I always ask my clients, like, in 5 years, where do you see yourself, right? Where do you see
Mhm.
this business? And it doesn't mean in that 5 years you're going to have met that or achieved that, or something hasn't
Right,
changed. It happens all the time, but where do you plan on being? And based
right.
on that conversation is how I say, okay, these are the entities that I think we should be looking at. Because keep in mind, there's multiple entities. I know most people don't know LLC and a corporation, but there's so many different types of entities out there that it's not like really a one size fit all. So that's why I'm saying, like, have that consultation with an attorney, because it's good to kind of have an understanding about where you want to be, where you're planning on going, and having an entity that can fit that idea. So when
It
you talk
houses.
about entities, you want to create it sooner rather than later. And the reason why is that, once you get to a certain level, having to switch that over is very, very difficult. So I've had
Mm.
clients that came to me, they were operating as sole proprietorships, came to me when they were making $3 and $4 million. We had to switch into an entity, and it's not that it's quote unquote hard, but there's a lot of moving parts, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
you
big.
entity, but now you've got employees, now you've got
It's
contracts,
a
now you've got
whole
bank accounts, now you have all these different things that have to be switched into this entity.
EIN
Is
right.
the same, right? So you can't have the same EIN or social security number. You can't have the same bank accounts. You can't have the same, numbers and vendors and credit cards. All of that stuff has to change. Contracts have to change. Lots of stuff has to change. So it's important, obviously it ends up costing more money over time, because when you do it later on, it's more stuff that has to move along with
Right.
it. So I
Right.
think understanding like where you're planning on being in the next 3 to 5 years, sorry, not days, next 3 years.
Hey.
You got $1 million business, right? It's important, and it's not about, some people ask me like how much money, and I'm like, it's not really about the money. It's really about what assets you need to protect, how you need to protect yourself, those kinds of things. Because even if you have a really small business that you're not playing, but you got $1 million in personal assets, you don't want the business
Somebody
being your personal assets, right? You got retirement and things like that, just like you were talking about, sole proprietorship. Everything is you. You are the
up
business.
for grabs.
So if you create a business and you do it as a sole proprietorship, that could affect your personal assets. And that may not be something that you want to have happen. So we need to create a separate entity so you can protect your personal assets.
And
Doesn't
when
matter
you
how
say
much money.
that,
And
when you
yeah,
say that, Shahara, to break it down for the layman, that means when she says protect your personal assets, that means if you get sued, they're
yeah,
able to sue you personally in a sole proprietorship because that business is rolled in under your social security number, right?
yes, yes. It could be an EIN too, but I mean,
But the
you are
way
the
doesn't.
business is you. So there's no separation between the person and the business. And so sometimes it'll be, well, that's my business, but if it's a sole proprietorship, it's not really, it's you. So to understand that.
It's just, man, it's like you're a contractor, almost like an Avon lady, and you get a 1099. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You're not really a full-fledged.
separate entity. Yeah, you gotta you want to separate when you create an entity, whether it be a corporation or LLC or a partnership or whatever, you kind of separate that business from the individual.
Right,
And that's really what makes the difference in terms of what we call liability, meaning
right,
what could happen to your personal assets.
right. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about creations and content and maybe some trademarking and what the difference is between copywriting, trademarking, that type of thing. Um, and I'll say that I actually have a copycat in South Carolina. I have a young lady who is copycatting me down to she light skinned little. I mean, all the way down to down to it. And I actually wrote to the copyright office. I asked them. I said, "Hey, I literally said this, I want to be like Oprah. I want to protect, I told them, I want to protect my whole brand. How do I do that for somebody that is literally copycatting?" And they're like, "You can't." And I was just like, "Dang it." So they literally came back and said, "Well, you can trademark, your logo type thing, maybe slogans or sayings or something like that. But like the show that I make, you can't copyright that." You know what I mean? It's like if you looked at TV right now, everybody got a chicken sandwich with a spicy sauce and a pickle. Everybody. So it's
Right.
not like you can copyright the thing, you know what I mean? So how does somebody protect their brand, their company? Because I've seen a lot of people out there, and it's not just me that have complained or I got a lot of people mimicking me and copying me and stealing my ideas and using my actual logos and like it's hard out there for
Yes.
small business, especially on Facebook. So
Right.
how do you protect yourself as a small, like a legitimate company? Because the bogus ones fall off,
Yeah.
you
So
know.
this is what I'm gonna say. And so I hope that you hear everyone out there hear it with the not sarcasm, but the reality, right? Is that if you're not willing to put the money behind protecting your brand, then there's no point in protecting your brand, right? So, regardless of whether you have trademarks or copyrights, which I'll explain in a moment, if you're not willing to do the cease and desist, if you're not willing to file the lawsuits, if you're not willing to, have that together to do, then there's no point in doing it, because whether you have a trademark or a copyright, um, those things require, enforcement. It requires protection. It requires the cease and desist in order to do it, because it's exclusivity that gives you the right to protect those things, that gives you the value. So I'm going to use an example that everybody knows and loves or hates, whatever is right? Disney. Disney does, their legal department is huge, because they are always dealing with copyright issues, always dealing with trademark issues, because every creative out there thinks that they can, create some Disney inspired thing
Get
and
off.
get a
Right.
cease and desist, right? Like, it happens constantly. So it's important to understand really how that works. So if we use Disney, for example, who has, a lot of trademarks and copyrights that in place. If you talk about Disney, the company, and you see how the word Disney, right, or Walt Disney, the way that it's written, right, the little special Disney handwriting that's there, those are trademarks, right? So when you hear Disney, when you see the word Disney, you know what that is, right? And there's no
Automatically.
other one out there,
Yep.
because they have the trademark on it,
Yep.
and they can do cease and desist and stop other people from using it. And that right there, right, protects that mark, right? That gives you the protection that you need in order to keep other people doing it. So anytime you see anybody using that stuff, cease and desist, immediately go out. They may file lawsuits, all kinds of things that will happen to protect that brand name. And the reason why it's so big is not just marketing, but also because they do the steps they need to in order to protect it, right? So that's one. On the other side of that with Disney is that they have lots and lots of copyright, right? So, that the old version of Mickey Mouse is the copyright is about to expire. I don't know if it already has or if it's coming up in the next year. But that copyright is the picture, right? Just the picture of Mickey Mouse and how he was drawn at that particular time. That was a copyright. So even with their movies, right, you have copyrights, you have multiple ones, right? You have the actual animation that's all put together, the
Right.
script, the
Characters.
songs,
Right.
there's multiple things that
Right.
you can do. Now,
Yep.
obviously for a smaller business, kind of copywriting all of those layers and that many things become quite expensive. Copyright in itself is relatively inexpensive, but when you have a whole lot going on,
Multiple.
be very expensive.
Right.
So
Right.
you need to know what you need to protect and why you want to protect it and how you want to protect it. So kind of now that you kind of have that in your head about all these different layers, bringing it down to something small is I'm just going to use your brand, Helena, if that's okay.
Please. Oh, please. I'm itching for this. Tear my shit apart, girl. I'm waiting for this.
Yeah, so the What's Poppin' USA logo that we see up there, right? That's
I got a whole umbrella we can
yeah.
talk about of all my shit I got going on. Go for it, girl.
So you have that trademark, right? You can have that trademark, the actual logo, right? So that if someone else tries to use that logo for, then you can do cease and desist. You can file, claims against them. You can do all of those things. That's what that is. So you can do the stopping with the trademark registration. For the copyright, the show itself, right, how it's produced. So you can, this version of it that when we finish, you can copyright this here. You can copyright your words. If there's music that played in, let's just say you have an original score that's done. The original score is the writer is the one that has the copyright. So then you have to get releases. So there's lots of things that have to go on that needs to happen. That's where having an experienced attorney really comes in. And when I say that small businesses really need to understand that that you have to have that money to put behind doing it, because a lot of times people will just be like, I want this trademark, but the trademark isn't really protected if you aren't willing to do what's necessary to protect it. And a
Right.
lot of times, too, people will want to have a trademark that's very what we call generic. So you may have something where you sell a red box and you call it red box. Well, you're describing
Every
what it is. You're
right.
not going to be able to kind of protect that. So a lot of times people want to use popular terms. I know marketing people, I argue with my clients all the time about this. Marketing people hate me when I talk about this, but those very descriptive words that just tell people what it is not something that you can really truly protect, because if it's in common language, it's not something that you can do. So all the big brands
Right.
that you see, you're like, well, it's common. No, it's not common. It's only specific to those companies. It's become kind of common because of great marketing.
Right.
So
Right.
Google, there is no other Google. There was no
Right.
such thing as Google when Google started. You didn't even know what Google was, right?
Right.
You never understand what it is because of marketing, right?
Right.
The same thing with Nike, the same thing, with lots of large companies, is that the name became big because of good marketing.
Cool.
And good marketing also had the trademark protection behind it, to keep others from using it and stealing it. So it's really important to understand, to not just use words that are everyday language. You really have a hard time protecting your brand when you use something
Yes,
that and everybody would say in a
that's
word.
correct. I had another company previously, and it was called greencitylistings.com, and they wouldn't let me trademark the .com. I had to remove that, and that's because it's so commonplace. Every website uses almost dot,
Right.
you know. Um, but one thing that I did find out with trademarking that folks may not know is that every single product or piece of merchandise has its own trademark code. Isn't that am I so if I wanted to use it for a website as opposed to using it on a t-shirt as opposed to using it on a mug, it's a different trademark and a different fee, right?
It's a class, yes. So there's trademark classes, and there's several classes out there. And so some are for goods, some are for services, and you have to basically protect yourself in each class that you actually do business in. 90% of the time, nobody's going to do business in all of them, right?
Right.
Like, only larger companies are going to try to get every single class.
Every
Um,
single
but most of the time, you're not going to, you maybe be in 2 or 3 classes, at one time or something like that. So yeah, you do have to protect yourself in the class and what you're in.
that was just something that weird that I didn't
Yes, the trademarks are very specific. A lot of times people try to do them themselves, or they'll use something like
mhm,
LegalZoom and whatever else,
mhm,
not really understanding the process, not really understanding what it protects, how it works.
right,
And so really having to understand, like, not just the classes, how you use them, how you use the mark, those kinds of things. Sometimes people just say, well, that's my line. Well, a line isn't a trademark, right? Like, that being your code word, isn't, the thing that you say isn't necessarily a trademark. It has to go to a particular good or service, in order to really,
be attached to something.
yes. So it's important to understand, like, how you use them, and why you use them, and what you're trying to protect. And so it's just kind of understanding that process, I find, is the thing that clients need to really know and say, hey, this is something that we can actually do.
Right,
But again, when you're doing it, understand that it doesn't stop with just the registration, it continues on.
right, because I actually this little copycat, child up in South Carolina, I had a logo previously that looked like a location symbol, like the little red teardrop, and in the middle of it, it had a pop-up shop, and that was my very first logo that I was using. This little child is using almost the exact same logo, and I'm just like, so I've switched, I've changed, I've upgraded, but that is very good to know because people were saying, well, do it, you know, a cease and desist, and I'm like, well, I didn't never trademark that, you know what I mean? So I can't really go after her for that, but there's a lot of that going on, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean, out in the internet world. If you could think of any like one or two solid pieces of advice for anybody embarking on a small business that wants to start a small business, um, do you have any from a legal standpoint for them? Do you have not any words of caution, but any words of guidance, like of where they should look, one of the first things they should do after they come up with this great idea?
Well, I definitely believe it's not necessarily legal advice, but what I would say is one of the things you want to do is take advantage of the services that are out there. When you do web searches, which I'm not saying don't do them, but it can be a whole lot of information that's overwhelming. And so that you get kind of information overload and then you don't know what to do. So I think a lot of great opportunities are out there that you can get free advice, free resources. One is SCORE, which is SCORE, SCORE, and it's run by the SBA. And they have retired executives that kind of coach you and give you, you can take classes. If they have actual, I don't know if they still do it because I haven't been to a SCORE office in a
Yeah,
while. They used to have like sample business plans that you can go and look at and stuff like that and get access to. And so that's something that you can do. It's a free resource, SCORE. So that's a good opportunity.
I like
Small business development centers, SBDCs.
mhm.
Again, some may be free, some may have a really nominal pricing, but they do a lot of classes. I teach at an SBDC here in Houston.
Oh,
Um, you can get classes taught by professionals. They have business advisors that can help you. Those are some things that you can do. And then there's also probably other places. The bigger the city, the more access you have. The smaller the city is probably a little less. But
right.
other places that probably give resources, free resources to small business owners that you can go and get information and learn.
Like
Um,
incubators or think tanks or something like that.
Not usually think tanks and stuff like that, but they're usually like nonprofit organizations that are out there that serve, small business owners. When I first started, when I first kind of came out of law school, I volunteered with this organization that doesn't exist anymore called Urban Business Initiatives. And they were a nonprofit, small nonprofit that, helped small business owners. So there are probably some around. Like I said, the bigger the city, the more access you probably,
More.
the smaller the city, you probably have a little less. But I would say you probably at least have an SBDC or a SCORE
Oh
somewhere
yeah.
around. And those are free resources that you can go. So I would say, to learn as much as you can, learn as much as you can about your industry, and then understand that not all advice on the interwebs are, the best advice.
All
Um,
for you, right?
to an attorney, put money aside to have a conversation with an attorney, put money aside to have a conversation with a CPA or accountant, put money aside, to have, conversations with a professional, because a lot of times when people are just talking about their experience, just do it here or just go here or whatever else, what their experience is may not be your experience.
Yours.
Thing, especially with regard to legal and accounting, it really is specific. And so you
Get
don't
them
get generic advice.
side street, them street doctors and
Yeah,
them street
that's
lawyers and
you know, because circumstances are different. And so you really want to at least put some money aside. So, if you can save, $500-600 to be able to pay for professional help, like I said, at least one consultation, I think, that would be beneficial for you.
I love it. Shahara, if anybody needs to holler at you, uh, where can they find you, child, besides going all the way to Houston? How can they
Yes,
contact you?
yes, yes. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook at The Right Lawyer. That's THEWRIGHTLAWYER. That's where I am, the Right Lawyer. So on Facebook and LinkedIn. On Instagram, it's the Real Right Lawyer. So TheRealWrightLawyer, the Real Right Lawyer. That's where I am on Instagram. And of course, you can go to my website, therightlawyer.com. Those are all the places where you can get in contact with me, connect with me. And so, yeah, that's what you can do.
Y'all, you need to go hit her up. She was just spewing information. She is a fountain of information over there in Houston. Shahara, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for coming on the show today. And I hope that, in the future, maybe you'll come back on and share some more of your wisdom with us.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, y'all. And again, Shahara Wright, the real right lawyer. Y'all go ahead and hit her up in Houston, y'all. It's been a pleasure.